Anatidae is a Latin-derived term meaning duck, and Anatidae is now used as the family name that includes many waterfowl, mainly the ducks, geese and swans. And today in the Plumes of Oz we're going to look at the wandering whistling duck. And like many ducks, they dive and have large broods, sometimes up to 16 ducklings. And here they are whistling. Wanderers are more common in the northern parts of Australia, but always fairly close to water. The greater majority of this video will be filmed in New South Wales, at the southern limits of their range. The remainder will be filmed in the tropics of Australia's north. There are 3 species of whistling duck found in Australia. The wandering and the plumed whistling duck are very common. The rare spotted whistling duck is found only at the tip of Cape York. When you see a pair of ducks like this in springtime, you can be certain that they have come away from the flock and are in breeding mode. Before we delve deep into the wandering whistling duck, let's have a quick review of the ducks found in Australia. The most common is the black Pacific duck with its beautiful teal operculum. The large shovel-like bill of this bird, in combination with the beautiful colours, easily identifies it as the Australian shoveler. Australia has 2 shell ducks, the Rajah shell duck with its contrasting deep chocolate and white, and the Australian shell duck with its iridescent tan and white remnant on the wing. In the female there's a white around the eye and face. The pink-eared duck, the only duck to have a little bit of pink, easily identified in the crowd with its large bill that has a broad curved tip. The hard head where the male has a white eye. The chestnut teal with its beautiful green head, but not the female. She is fawn, just like the grey teal. The diving ducks with their square tails, the blue-billed duck, and the musk duck. The freckled duck are rather plain, but the male has this beautiful red bill. The wood duck, as his name implies, is often found perched in trees. There are 2 pygmy geese, the green pygmy geese with this beautiful teal colour, and the cotton pygmy geese, which looks as though it's really been bleached. The magpie goose is always an Australian favourite with its soft calls and easily identified. The black swan with its beautiful white tips. And finally the whistling ducks, the plumed whistling duck and the wandering whistling duck. Swamps, lakes and lagoons are always a peaceful place and a birding paradise. Just watching the long-legged waders go around the edge of a lagoon, the grebes, ducks and cormorants swimming and diving, the swans hopping over water trying to get enough speed for takeoff. Such scenes are always a delight to observe. This lagoon is situated in Wallsend in New South Wales, and at this time is a hub for the wandering whistling ducks and their families. Here a wandering whistling duck separates itself from the crowd of other water birds with several wood ducks, and the other darker bird at the back is the chestnut teal with its darker head. Above the muted call of the swan, you can hear the whistling duck's whistle. Amongst these ducks you can see birds that have longer necks. These are the wandering whistlers. They are standing on the mudflat. In the background we can see other ducks swimming. These are mostly Pacific black duck with their shorter necks. So the whistling ducks can easily be separated from the other ducks because their swan-like neck, and Dendrocygnia is the genus name for the whistling ducks. Dendro, for tree, taken from the Greek, and cygna for swan, taken from the Latin. And the species name is arcuata for curved. So a tree length, swan-like curved neck. Another way of differentiating ducks when one is looking at a lake like this is looking at the bird bill. Whistling ducks have a medium-sized bill. You can see how the black Pacific duck has a longer bill, and the wood duck has a short, more conical-shaped bill. Now here all the wanderers have extended necks, which makes it much easier to pick them out, but they don't always have their necks extended. It's usually only when they are moving. When at rest or roosting, they usually have the neck contracted, making it far more difficult to pick them in a crowd, particularly from other ducks that have got this lovely rich fawn colour, like the teal. See the flocking nature of these wandering whistling ducks? They group together and go in a line, suggesting that they are a family, particularly when they swim in a line like that. This has just been filmed in the summer of 2023, so you can understand that these are younger birds. They aren't as intensely marked, and this suggests that they are young birds from a recent hatchling. When the whistling duck is in the water, you have this white line of feathers just running along, parallel to the water surface. Male and female birds are difficult to separate. In fact, for all purposes, they are isomorphic. Some ducks in Australia are threatened species, like the freckled duck, but the wanderer seems to have good numbers and is not classified as a threatened species. Here there is a better view of the wood duck's conical short bill, and when you compare it to the wanderers, there is a significant difference. Occasionally there may be some clues as to separating the male from the female. The richer rufous colour in the male, but this is often very hard to sort out unless the birds are standing in the same light at the same angle. And at the tip of the bill there is a nail or a small downward projection to help the bird to dig into the mud. The female has a shorter nail than that of the male. However, once again, very difficult to tell as the birds are moving about on the lake. Here with this pair, my best guess is that the male is in the foreground with a longer nail to the bill. Back at the Wallsend Swamp, over 20 birds together, and they seem to flock. As mentioned, this is at the southern limit of the breeding area. It appears that these are 3 small family units, for when they go to roost on the shoreline, they separate into small groups, but there are always a few loners. It seems that when they go to the shore, it is then that they become territorial. Here an example of shoreline roosting, where 7 wandering whistling ducks cluster together, probably as a breeding group. Look at the sun hitting on the front of this wanderer. It gives this beautiful tan iridescence, and there is a second bird to the right. In the foreground, the ducks have longer bills. So they aren't wanderers, teal and a black duck. Now one whistling duck is heading to the shore. He's heading to the shore probably to feed, and when we look at the feeding patterns of the wandering whistling duck, it's variable. Sometimes it's in the lake like this, where the birds are putting their heads down to the bottom of the lake, catching weed, for these are vegetarian, totally dependent on the weed in the lake. On the freeze frame you will see them bring up the aquatic grass. Moving away from these wanderers feeding, I want to go to the plumed whistling duck. And the reason for this is to talk about the different feeding patterns of two very similar ducks. Again, as we watch the plumed whistling ducks, you can hear the whistling sounds coming from them. Notice on the sides, they also have white feathers, but instead of going back, they go up as large plumes, giving rise to the name of this duck. In addition to the elongated white plumes, the plumed whistler has barring over the chest, making it quite distinctive from the wanderer. And here on a hill in Townsville, you can see the wandering whistling ducks are more tan and a larger bird than the foreground plumed whistling ducks. Plumed whistling ducks on the march, for these birds eat not only around the pond, but they will also go to grass areas, feeding on field grass, whereas the wandering whistling duck feeds on the pond grass and the wet grass around the edges, not the field grass. These subaquatic and wet grasses have surface organisms that probably are cellulase positive, helping in the digestive process. So I suspect the plumed whistling duck probably has more cellulase in its gut, a little bit like geese, that have intrinsic cellulase that can break down heavier dry grasses with a lot of cellulose that cannot be digested by the wanderer. Now this is a huge flock of plumed whistling duck. You can see the density, and they stretch all the way around the lagoon. There were over 500 birds. It is reported that wanderers can get up to this many, but I personally have never seen it. And 20 birds in New South Wales for me is a good number. The largest group of wanderers that I have seen in the tropics is 40 birds. Another duck that is very good at grazing on field grass like the plumed whistling duck is the wood duck. So let's get back to the wandering whistling duck. We saw them putting their heads down to the bottom of the lake, but most of their grazing is done on the grassy edges of the lake. And here you can see their heads are going down, not very deep, but they are gathering food from the grass on the edges. As the water gets deeper, so the birds have to really put their head down and extend it to get to the bottom and get the grass. And this is a process called dabbing that requires upending, and the only thing we now see is the tail of the bird sticking up above the surface. These dabbing wanderers don't have a lot of colour. They are younger, more immature. More dabbling going on. As mentioned, the wanderers are diving birds. They can dive, but I don't believe they dive for food. I've never seen them bring food up in their bill after diving. I believe that it's more exploratory. Now if you come back to these little ducklings, only a couple of days old, you'll notice that the adults are diving, looking for underwater predation, and the young ducks are also quite capable of diving even at this stage. Diving ducks like the musk duck that eats more than grass will dive underneath the ducklings, grab them and take them down for a feed. So the adults do underwater vigilance, far more frequently when the ducklings are in tow. Always while diving they survey for watergrass beds. The next mode of feeding is on the muddy foreshore. Just watch this wanderer. He's got more than his bill and his head. He's right up to his neck in the mud. The reason they're doing this is because of the roots or the tubers of the plants. Look at the black head on this wanderer. He's really been down into the mud searching for something delicious. These wanderers are whistling in an orchestrated fashion. They are not happy with another group of wanderers coming up onto the shore. So this is where they become territorial. The reason for this I'm uncertain, but suspect that they are saying, the grass growing along this part of the foreshore is ours. Go and find your own. But there may well be other reasons. Going back this time to the Mary River in Northern Territory, here to watch this territorial dispute between wanderers. I suspect there were ducklings close by that I could not see. Lastly, I want to mention the duck feet. Anatidae are distinguished because of their difference in feet. The waterfowl that have a total dependence of catching fish underwater, for instance the grebes, have the syndactyly webbing crossing all the 4 toes, whereas ducks only have syndactyly going between 3 toes, giving rise to only 2 membranes that are more than adequate for surface propulsion. This concludes our video on the wandering whistling duck. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you would like to watch future episodes of Australian Birds in the Wild, hit the subscribe button and then the bell for notification.